My name is Suzy O'Connor and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I work for NHS Education for Scotland, which is a specialist health board that provides training to the Scottish workforce. So when people think about trauma, they often think about what we'd call single event trauma, like car crashes or other disasters that can result in people experiencing sort of post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, so things like re-experiencing the trauma in some way as nightmares or flashbacks, levels of hyperarousal, or emotional numbness or flatness. In fact, these types of trauma are quite uncommon, and the people who get badly affected by this sort of single event trauma are often people who've experienced complex or developmental trauma, which refers to early repeated abuse, neglect, separation and adverse experiences, and typically these happen within early caregiving relationships. So we know from the Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs studies, that complex trauma experiences are common, and research in Wales shows that around 14% of adults have experienced 4 or more ACEs as children, and these ACEs can have devastating effects on children's development that last well into their adult lives. So they impact on mental health outcomes. So we know that people who've experienced 4 or more ACEs as children are at a much higher risk of depression, suicide and psychosis. But what the ACEs studies show us is that physical health is impacted as well by these adverse childhood experiences. And that's not just because of ongoing bodily stress responses, but also because of the health harming behaviours that people engage in to cope with the ongoing stress. So that's things like smoking or drinking or taking drugs or eating too much. So just some examples. So people with 4 or more ACEs tend to have poorer mental and physical health outcomes, and they are at an increased risk of premature death as a result of that. Crucially, for those of us who work with children, the impact of trauma can also make parenting really hard. So these ACEs can skip down generations.